person whose belief it is to make sure they're okay with spouting it out in front of the room and everything. But some examples where it was effective would be really a useful thing. Okay, we've got one here. Okay, just a second, we've got one over here. When I'm assertive, I cannot get what I want is the belief. Okay.
And so the referential index was, have you ever known? Do you know a woman? I thought woman was important.
Okay.
A woman who has been very assertive and got exactly what she wanted.
Excellent. And so she's saying, so do you know a woman who was very assertive and got exactly what she wanted? And
Exactly what she wanted.
okay, excellent. The key words there. And this is a great example because notice how delivery makes a difference. How much more impact does that have as opposed to say, so do you know anyone who's been assertive and got what they wanted? No. So delivery matters too. Thank you. Okay, there's one over here.
I think Ron was saying because I'm big, people give me a false sense of respect. They do it out of fear.
So I never realized how scared I was of you, but now so the belief is because I'm big, people give me a false sense of respect out of fear. And the counterexample or switch referential index.
Have you ever known anybody who is smaller than you who's gotten a false sense of respect?
Have you ever known somebody who is smaller than you who has gotten a false sense of respect? Interesting, and that shifted your experience then. Great. Okay, anybody else? Any other zingers? Well, that's okay. A couple of good examples are great. So that's terrific. And when they really worked, if you go back to the moment where your experience was shifting, what was it like when a counterexample really went in and worked and changed your experience? Either of you, Alessandra or Ron.
I just got it. Well, it was basically a broadening of my opinion about something.
So a sense of broadening about your opinion.
I saw something that countered what I believed to be the case.
Great. Something that countered what he believed to be the case. And so now, would you say your experience is that you no longer believe what you believed before, or would you say it's lessened?
Yeah.
Okay. With counterexample, very often that's the case, I find, is that it shakes it up. Sometimes it completely blows it out. If a person has you could say, meta-program such that if something's true, it's always true across the board, then a counterexample can really blow it out. Okay, then if it's not true here, it must not be true across the board. But for most people, a counterexample is going to be loosening it up, not necessarily changing the whole thing. Okay, so next set of patterns. A friend of mine, a former boyfriend of mine actually in Ohio, had a client, and his client had a fear of flying in airplanes. And so he did the phobia process with her, and she came back and he asked her how it worked. And she said, well, I had this trip and I had to fly, and I was really okay through the checking in and getting on the plane and the takeoff, and I was fine through all that, but then the plane hit a bump in the air, and then I lost it. So up until that point it worked, but then, it kind of fell apart. And so then my friend John said, well, when the plane hits that bump, did you realize that means that the air is strong enough to hold up the plane? If it's strong enough to cause a bump, it has to be strong enough to hold up the plane after all. And for her, then that worked. Next time she flew in a plane, bumps, no problem. So now this is a pattern that you've also had before in NLP. Let me give you some other examples of it, though. We want to include it again because it's very useful to include in our whole range of NLP sleight of mouth patterns. So we can use one of these or one of yours. I'd like somebody to stand up, and you can actually stay where you are rather than coming up here, just to make it real quick and demonstrate the pattern. Yes, Alessandra. Okay, go ahead. And
I'm really scared about cockroaches.
okay. So you're scared of cockroaches. And what do cockroaches, so that's, we don't yet have an A and a B, do we? So what do cockroaches mean to you? Oh, actually, we do have an A and a B. Cockroaches cause me to be scared. I'm going to ask, though, what do they mean to you such that you're frightened of them?
They are dirty.
Okay. All right.
And they can go all over. And they can go everywhere.
Okay.
So you can't kill them.
Okay. So they're dirty and they can go everywhere. So, you know, Alessandra, the fact that you have this belief means that you are a person who cares about keeping things clean and neat and looking nice, don't you? Yeah, okay. So now I wouldn't expect that to change your belief necessarily, but it does demonstrate the pattern. Now, another thing I could say is, you know, when cockroaches are dirty, that means that they are giving a person an opportunity to notice when they need to clean the kitchen. No, that doesn't. That doesn't work. No, I'm not really quite expecting this pattern to work for this, but I thought, well, might as well throw it out there. With these patterns, the important thing is to try the pattern and then see if it fits or not, especially now because we're arbitrarily telling you which pattern to use. In real life, you get to pick out the pattern you think is going to work the best. Okay, so another A and a B then. Yes?
If I work on the computer all day, it means that I end up working on the computer in my sleep at night.
Okay. If you work on the computer all day, it means that you end up working on the computer in your sleep at night. So working on the computer all day could also mean that you are overworking yourself. Okay. So, or we could say, you know, working on the computer all night can mean that you're accomplishing so much more than you would if all you did was work consciously during the day. Yeah, she's not really taking that one in. We can tell, can't we? Do you notice the nonverbals of yeah as opposed to well, maybe not, okay? So the important thing is, as I demonstrate this, sharpen up your sensory acuity and notice the nonverbals of the person I'm talking to. Is it going in or not going in? So you need to have those examples of calibrating to both right now. Okay, thanks. Another example of a belief.
Living my finances means that I'm wasting precious time that I could be having fun.
Oh, doing your filing means you're wasting precious, financing.
Yeah.
Doing your financing means you're wasting precious time when you could be having fun. So I'm wondering, Ron, is there a way in which doing your filing means that you are a well-rounded person that cares about not only having fun, but also living in a neat home and having a neat office? Okay, all right, wasn't a big shift. He didn't totally out and out reject it. It wasn't a big shift there. Oh, financing, and I heard filing in the beginning, and that kind of got stuck in there. Okay, so the same thing would actually apply there. So in what way does doing your financing also mean that you're a well-rounded person, that it's important for you to have fun as well as keeping your finances in order? Means you're organized? Okay. And in what way can having fun all the time mean that you would be limited? So that would be an example of applying it to just the A side or just the B side. And then we could go for A and B. So Ron, the fact that you have this belief means that you're a person who really likes to have a good time.
You bet.
Okay, so he's agreeing. It's not shifting his experience a whole lot, but he is agreeing with me, so it is going in. Okay, so that's all the time I want to spend on examples of this. Except that I want to give you one now for you to give me an example back. So success is never making a mistake. Success means never making a mistake. So somebody give me back this pattern. That's last time. So the ones I've been demonstrating. I haven't named it yet. The one I've been demonstrating the last several times. So if my belief is success is never making a mistake, how can you apply this pattern I've been demonstrating back to it?
Are mistakes always associated with success?
Okay, so mistakes are always associated with success. Okay, or you could say mistakes are always mean that you are becoming successful. No, always associated with success. Okay, that one's a little bit iffy, but it's very close. It might be this pattern, it might be another pattern. It's kind of in a gray area. When you say is associated with, that makes it vague as far as whether you're talking about meaning or causality. So that's why I'm saying it's a little.
Mistakes means success always?
Okay.
Always means success? No, no.
Does making a mistake always mean success?
No,
Is
no.
that what you're
No.
Would be, I admire very much that you notice your mistakes and learn from them to make you more successful.
Okay. So that is a little different. It's a little different. We're going to get to that pattern pretty soon, too. It's another good pattern. Yes?
How about, I wonder if never making a mistake means that you're not learning.
Yes. Okay. Now, the key thing is, he said means. Okay? What we're doing with this pattern is redefining. What else can A mean or B mean or A and B mean? What else can it mean other than what the person currently thinks it means? So, for example, here, another thing we could do is say, so success is accomplishing what you want to accomplish no matter how many hurdles you cross. So you're redefining a portion of the belief. Or never making a mistake means that you're so cautious that you probably aren't going to accomplish much. Right? Or having this belief means that you really care about doing things well. So that's the meaning of having the whole belief. Now, sometimes, again, with reframing, sometimes these work really well, and sometimes they're kind of so-so. I find that what makes them work the best, of course, is combining them with all the other sleight of mouth patterns. So right now, we're just temporarily using them all by themselves to see what happens. Now, let's go to the next pattern, a couple examples of it first before we describe what it is. So I was working with a client once, and she said, well, I have these issues, and she believed in multiple lifetimes. She said, because I've had these issues for the last 15 lifetimes, I cannot change them. So I said, okay, so you've had these for the last 15 lifetimes. So what was happening before that? And that shifted it for her. She's like, oh, well, I guess something was different going on 16 lifetimes ago. So I guess I am actually capable of doing something different. So that's one example. I'll give you another example from Connie Ray's work. And this also, the content might be useful for some of you since you've brought up a similar issue, or it may or may not apply for you. The client said, I can't say no. Well, I do say no, but I feel terrible when I say it, and often I don't say no, and then my family gets shorted. And he's talking about saying no to clients. So Connie Ray said, so how do you manage to feel bad when you say no? And the client said, well, when clients call and want to work with me, they've heard how good I am, and I know it would take them longer with someone else, so I don't want to say no. And also, I like the strokes I get from working with people and making them feel better. And Connie Ray was familiar with this person's work, and she knew that he wasn't just delusional. He really was an excellent practitioner. So Connie Ray said, okay, so you want to help other people and get strokes for yourself. What would result in your helping the most people and getting strokes for yourself in the long run? Not just in that moment, but over time, considering all your clients. And then the client says, well, to get my rest, take care of myself, and so on. So he's saying the answer, but he's clearly not stepping into it, is he? So then Connie Ray said, so you were, listen to the verbs here, so you were just thinking of that one client rather than thinking about all the people you might be able to help in the future and your family and the impact you want to have on them. Isn't that what you had been doing? Finishing it off in the past. And so now the client's starting to really flush, and he's getting skin color changes, and he laughs and says, well, I guess so. And then he says, so what will get me to think about the big picture in that moment when someone calls? And Connie Ray says, well, let me ask you this. When will you still want to say yes? In that moment when someone calls and asks for something, what will still get you to say yes, even though you're thinking of the big picture? The client says, well, the first thing that comes to mind is if they will pay lots of money. That will help my family in the long run. And Connie Ray said, okay, good. What else in that moment will still get you to say yes? And he said, if the person calls and wants something that might be an interesting learning for me. And Connie Ray said, great, and that will benefit your other clients over time as well. And what else? The client said, well, if I really do have the time and my family will still be happy. So then Connie Ray says, great, now, can you think of anything that can possibly stop you from automatically thinking about the big picture when a client asks you to do something so that you will help the most people and get the most strokes? And the client said, no, I don't think so. Now, if you pretend to take on the position of being this client, and you start out with this belief that, well, I can't say no because this client needs something, and then Connie Ray says, so what will, let me get to that point here. What would result in your helping the most people and getting strokes for yourself in the long run? Not just in that moment, but over time, considering all your clients. So what happens with your internal submodalities in response to this question? Things get bigger. In time, exactly. So it's not just taking the same picture and enlarging it. It's expanding the frame to take in more information, right? More time. Does the frame take in more of anything else in addition to time? So your experience could be that it gives you an awareness of a vision as opposed to the day-to-day. So that would be one way to characterize it. And what... Mm-hmm. Exactly. More strokes. So more time, more strokes, more context, both work and family, and also number of people. So it expands the frame with respect to several things. And it's that, in terms of submodalities, Diane, I'd say that it's that expanding of the frame that results in an experience of more of a sense of vision. So would that fit for you? Okay. Okay, so This next pattern is changing the frame. What do I want to pay attention to? What do I want to include or exclude from my picture or from the sounds or from the feelings that we're working with? And we can change the frame, expanding it larger or smaller or moving it from one place to another with respect to contexts, time, resources, numbers of people, criteria, among other things. But that's a good list to start off with. And now, whenever you do a context reframe in NLP, you are changing the frame in what way? Are you making it bigger, making it smaller? Are you moving it from here to there? Context reframe. So it can be any of those, actually. If I start out, I'm too compulsive, and I think of it as across the board, I'm too compulsive. And you say, well, I bet you never bounce a check. Okay, that changes the frame by making it smaller to a specific example of a context. So counterexample always changes the frame in that way by going to a smaller frame. On the other hand, if it's, well, I'm obnoxious in this situation, and then you say, well, isn't it great that you have that skill, which is useful to apply over here with somebody that is paying attention to that you don't appreciate their attentions. So there, it's more of a sideways shift, just going, without changing the size of it, going from here to there. And I guess those are the only examples that come to mind right now. I'm not thinking of a context reframe in which the frame enlarges. So I guess it's going to do either smaller or side to side, context reframing. Okay, now for changing the frame, the thing to play with here is pretend like you have a camera lens and you're literally looking at one picture, and then what happens if you expand or if you contract, if you move around that camera lens. So literally play with the frame that you have in your mind as you're working with various beliefs. There are some beliefs in which it's easy to discover how to change the frame usefully. And there are other beliefs where, in my experience, changing the frame, may or may not be effective, just like some of these other patterns. But as you can tell from the examples that I was giving you ahead of time with Connie Ray's client, with the 15 lifetimes woman, there are times when expanding or contracting or moving from side to side the frame is just the thing. It's kind of like there are some of the sleight of mouth patterns that are like a spice that you wouldn't just put on all your food, but for certain dishes, it's exactly what you want. Okay, so any questions about changing the frame, how to do it, what to go for with that?
I'm a little confused there,
Mhm.
because you were saying just now about going smaller, or side to side.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Side to side
For this
means,
exercise.
yeah.
I understand that.
Okay.
And then you were talking about us playing with a camera lens so we could go larger. And are you talking about including all change frames?
Yeah, for change frame, all possibilities are fair game. So you can change the frame by making it larger, by making it smaller, by moving it from side to side, from one context or situation to another. So all of those are includable. Okay, and you can do so with respect to contexts, time, resources, numbers of people, criteria, or anything else. Any other class of information that you would like to play with. Okay, should we take a belief and just play with this a little bit and see what we can come up with? Let's take this one and just see what happens. Since I disappointed my father, I'm worthless. So let's start with just a representation of this. Since I disappointed my father, therefore, I am worthless. It means I'm worthless. Now, if you take your camera lens and find out what happens if you shrink it down, if you expand it, if you move it from one place to another, and with changing the expansion and contraction, you can do so with respect to time, respect to numbers of people, different situations. And just notice, do you come up with a way of changing what is in that frame that could potentially affect the belief in a useful way?
Have you ever disappointed anybody who you were not worth? Didn't mean you were worthless.
Okay. Have you ever disappointed anybody and it didn't mean you were worthless? Yes. And so we can take the frame and move it to a place where it's not true. And in doing so, we are generating, this is like a mechanism for generating a pattern that we've done, right? Which pattern is this? Counterexample. Yeah. And by moving that frame, that's a strategy for generating a counterexample. Okay, any other ways of applying changing frame here that you think could be useful?
Disappointment is a part of life. That's just how it is. This is basically feedback. You learn from the experience.
Okay, so we're taking the frame of disappointment and we are expanding it to include a different meaning. So it's a part of life, it's feedback. Okay, and in the course of doing this, he's doing which pattern as well? Yep, redefine. Yeah, he's giving a new meaning to it. Yeah, yes.
You might say something like, have you ever noticed places where your father had that opinion or attitude and it had nothing to do with you?
Okay, so times when your father had that opinion and it had nothing to do with you. So there we're moving the frame to what? First of all, are we expanding the frame, shrinking the frame, just moving it side to side? So, well, we started out with, I disappointed my father. So that's kind of like inclusive of all my interactions with my father to start with, perhaps. So in general, I disappointed my father. So we're going for, is there a time when, say that again.
I said, is there a time when your father had that attitude or opinion and it didn't have anything to do with you?
Okay, so it's still within the frame of times when my father was disappointed. So how are we changing the frame, though? Okay, all right, I see. So we're doing two things here. One is, she says, was there a time when? And so that means we're coming down to a time. Rather than disappointing my father in general, we're going down to a time when his disappointment had nothing to do with you. So then we're also reducing the number of people involved, or at least we're excluding this particular person. Yeah, excellent.
How about, have there been other times, or are there other times in your life where you feel worthy?
Okay, so now how are we changing the frame? Yeah, we're definitely moving outside of the whole father thing and going to times when you felt worthy. So maybe changing from laterally from side to side. It might, in my experience, it also shrinks it because I'm going for a specific thing rather than a general response from somebody. So, okay, good. So you have, what's that? What would I say in terms of changing the frame? In changing the frame, one possibility, one thing I might say is, so in what way can your dealing with this issue over time allow you to have better ways of dealing with disappointment that you might encounter in the future? So I'm changing the time frame to go all the way out to having already dealt with the issue. So I'm going out into the future and then noticing, how does this give you some other benefit? It's not quite a redefine. Actually, it includes a pattern that we haven't had yet. It's one of the next group. Okay, so those are some examples of changing frame and redefining. And so now go ahead and get in new groups of 3 again. And let's take, I'll adjust the minutes, of course, seeing as how things go. But let's start out going for about, let's say, 10 minutes. We'll start out with 10 minutes. And go for it.